Welcome back. For your do now, I'd like you to compare and contrast North Korea and the United States. Explain similarity, difference, and why it's important. There's a lot of different answers you could have gotten for this. This would be a level three answer. It would have taken several sentences. You could have talked about how teenagers in North Korea are also big on socializing and playing sports um, and being kids. The big difference is they don't have access to like modern technology, like the internet phones, and this is important because um, they don't understand how the rest of the world works and what they're um, seeing as far as entertainment or news isn't always accurate. There's a lot of ways you could answer this question. All right, my slides are out of order. Okay. So today we're going to be looking at sort of a combination of what we've been doing for the past few weeks and tying it into a lot of stuff we've been doing all year. Um, We're going to look at how population growth, development, and growth of cities are all interconnected and the positive and negative impacts we have on this within cities in Asia. So, quick reminder of development. We've got sort of three stages. We have underdeveloped countries, developing countries, and developed. Underdeveloped countries are the ones that are really struggling. They have very few resources. Their jobs they offer are not skilled jobs, so they pay very little. They tend to be very hard manual labor. There's very few social programs around education or healthcare. Their government is usually a very corrupt or very failed government. As countries get better, they start doing some of these things better, they turn into what we call developing countries, where they're utilizing some of their resources. They have a lot of unskilled jobs, mostly factory, but they pay a little bit better. They have some programs around education and healthcare, but they're not always good or not always everyone has access to them. They tend to be run by a dictator with very few rights for the people. Developed countries have lots of resources they use. They have lots of different types of jobs, including skilled jobs. They have good social programs. And they tend to have good governments. All right, so countries are kind of moving in this direction from underdeveloped to developed. Um, and as they develop, this is going to affect their population. It's also going to affect their cities. Um, a few weeks ago, we learned about how that development affects population. That countries that are very underdeveloped, people tend to have lots of kids, but also have a very high death rate. So their population stays low. As they start to develop, they get some health care. It's pretty easy to drop that death rate really fast. But people keep having lots of babies, so their population starts to explode. Stage three is when the birth rate starts to slow down, but your population is still growing very fast. It's not until stage four that things sort of calm down. You still have a huge population, but it's not growing anymore. And then stage five, it starts to decrease. So, how does this affect urbanization? So, first, we have some economic development. They start to grow in wealth, get better infrastructure, better jobs. This leads to a drop in the death rate, but birth rates remain high, population booms. All those people start moving into cities so they can gain access to jobs, housing, education, healthcare. Now, it's not a simple straight line like this. There's a lot of all of these things are happening at once, and it's not always positive. It's not always good things. All right, this population boom is going to force people into cities. Hopefully, those are good cities that are functioning well, that can improve development, which slow down growth, which solves a lot of the problems. Unfortunately, a lot of the countries that are developing don't have cities with good infrastructure to handle all this stuff. So that's where a lot of these problems come from. Here are some of those cities in East Asia. This one is in China, Guangzhou in China. We got Taipei in Taiwan. We got Seoul, South Korea. All right, these are all major developed cities that are extremely successful, great jobs, great healthcare, great education, great access to technology, all that. And it's easy to understand why people would be moving to these cities. That's where the jobs are. It's where people can make money. A lot of these East Asian countries, if you're outside the city, there's not a whole lot of job opportunities. That's true in the United States as well. A lot of small towns don't have the jobs for people like the cities do. If you don't have an education, you have to go to the city and hope to work in like a factory where They don't need high education or skills, they just need you to work. This is also where schools are. So a lot of people who are moving into the cities, they're looking to get an education themselves, but also for their kids and looking towards the future and what are their job opportunities going to be. Also, if you want access to healthcare, it tends to be in the major cities. So this includes jobs in healthcare, but also access to medicine, vaccine, surgeries, things like that. And also access to technology. If you want the internet, you want Wi-Fi, you want this modern stuff, the newest cars, that's all in the cities. It's not happening in the small towns. A lot of those small towns are struggling to keep electricity, to keep internet connected. You have to go to the cities if you want this. On the other hand, cities are causing mass pollution. Lots of air pollution coming from these factories, from these cars, waste getting into the water, littering, right? Lots of pollution, a lot of negative effects of this. All these people moving to the cities, they don't always have the housing for all those people, or the jobs for all those people, or food for all those people. And a lot of them get forced into slums where they're struggling to survive. Also, when you get into these cities, the working conditions aren't as great as they seem. And there's a term used for this. It's called sweatshops, where people are working 12, 14 hours a day, every day of the week for a couple dollars a day, $5 a day. And they're horrible conditions. People get hurt. People die in these places. And long-term health effects. There's a lot of problems that come from these, yet these are the jobs people are going for. There's another weird one a lot of people don't think of: failed infrastructure. If you're a country and you know this population boom's coming, you're trying to build up your cities, you're trying to build as fast as possible, sometimes governments make mistakes and they don't build things properly. Here's an example of China. They've made these major roads, huge bridges, because they had this whole city planned. Well, turns out that's not where people needed to be. That's not where the factories were. That's not where the resource and trade was happening. So they built this whole city and no one lives there anymore. So they wasted all this money and energy to provide for the people. It turns out none of the people needed that stuff. They needed it in a different city, and this all become failed, lost infrastructure. Now, to a country like China, this is a problem. But for a country like North Korea or some of those struggling countries like Indonesia or India, this is devastating. This could set the government back decades, where they're not providing for their people, not building what they need. They're going to leave their people in poverty for a very long time. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a gallery walk, highlighting some of these positive and negatives issues in Asia. You're going to work with a partner. Partner one is going to try to explain, is this a positive or negative impact, and explain why. Partner two is going to find evidence that supports this. And then you're going to rotate roles at each picture. Let me know if you need help.